Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about My Adventures with Superman, Season 1, Episode 9. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we finally have the conversation between the General and Superman, which really quickly, I kept seeing his name, but I kept forgetting to talk about it, that the General is voiced by Joe De La Fuentes. I'm probably butchering his name. He's one of those actors where you like, when you see him, you're like, oh yeah, I know him. Like, one thing I know him from is Law and Order SVU, who's kind of one of the recurring, like, crime scene analyst. I believe that was his character job for quite a few years in the show. I also know he was a pretty, I guess, series regular or maybe recurring character in he played a recurring character in the show Hemlock Grove. But also Amanda Waller, I kept being like, why does her voice sound so familiar? Looked at the credits, it's Deborah Wilson. I don't think I'd seen that in previous episodes, but I was like, oh, that's super dope. Which is just kind of interesting. Like, I wonder if I'd have to look through her filmography, because I'm curious, like, has she done, because I know she's another Mad TV alumni who's kind of done a lot of voiceover work, and I'm curious, like, is this like her first DC property? Because it's interesting, because obviously another prolific Mad TV voice actor is Phil Lamar, who's definitely done some DC stuff as like Green Lantern and other characters, but that just kind of interesting to me. But either way, we finally had that confrontation of like, okay, so what is it that the General has such an issue with Clark about? Because I was curious too, like, because the thing is, it's not a situation like this has nothing to do with Clark. There's something going on here where he is tied to these in some shape or form. I kept being like, okay, could this be like a Brainiac situation? But seeing what ended up going down and what the General refers to as Zero Day, which Amanda does call him Sam. So I was like, okay, like, that's all the confirmation left that you need. Once again, it's like, it's there, but like, that was the last confirmation, because General Lane's name is Sam. So, I probably wouldn't have even known, once again, if it wasn't for Superman and Lois, I probably wouldn't even know that, because he goes by his name the entire time. It's like, oh, it's Sam. So it's like, okay. But either way, I'm also curious too, because I'm curious, is that canonical to the comics, or is that just something they're doing for the show? Because obviously some people's circumstances are different from what they might traditionally be. I'm curious, has Amanda Waller always had a military background? Maybe, I don't know if anything's ever really tackled that or not. I don't remember if that ever came up in Smallville. I mean, always know her. She's always obviously tied to the government, like, secret ops type of stuff. But I don't know if she's ever been like having like a military history like Sam does. But in this case, they did. But maybe she has, and I don't think it's something I've ever really heard really pointed, like really fleshed out. I mean, I could say that might just be like a comic book thing of like, yeah, it's very fleshed out in certain comics and stuff like that. But either way, we see now why the General has such a like hard on for Clark, why he thinks like, oh, you're the bad guy in this situation, because 20 years ago you like they were sent to kind of investigate something. It was kind of like, it kind of reminded me of like some Infinity War type of stuff, of just like a giant like thing in the air, and then it like opens up a portal, and that ends up like an armada comes through it. It ends up wiping the absolute floor with them, and the technology that Task Force X has on their hands right now is technology left behind from the last attack. So it is kind of almost that Nick Fury thing of, hey, like, I see the threat out there, and I'm trying to prepare the world for what's to come. It is my job. I had to witness so many, like, fellow soldiers getting annihilated. Like, we are not ready for this fight. Living in that fear and that anger and that preparation and that desperation for 20 plus years, of course you're not going to, like, really go for answers. You're just going to, like, kind of rush through of like, you created this narrative and you're striking at it. Because he does bring this up later on when he sees Clark's reaction to everything, because he's like, well, it doesn't make any sense. Superman's too young. Like, he would like, not if they age at the same rate as humans, which they don't. At least, it feels like they typically, like, I know they've talked about that in like live action stuff, like like Supergirl's really leaned into that of like, oh yeah, people like Kryptonians look younger than what they are because they age slower than humans. So I think that's even canonical to Superman in the comics that he aged slower. So, but it does seem like he does age maybe at a certain point. Like, I don't think it's going to be invincible levels of aging, but I think it's going to be probably a situation of just like lives a little bit longer than, I don't know. I mean, I've never really, I don't know any, because I'm not a comic book person, I don't know the stories of how far Superman has kind of aged and how long he's lived. But I do know that is a thing of like, well, they do age slower, but he is still like, he legitimately is in his early 20s. So he was a baby when that all went down. My immediate thought was, because of like the suit and everything, I was like, okay, so this isn't a Brainiac thing. I was like, is it a multiverse thing? I mean, they did throw that in there. So I'm wondering, is that Clark? That has to be a Superman from a different universe then, if that's the case. But because Clark's just assuming like those were my people. It's like, because once again, he doesn't, and I think they play with that so well, because someone telling Clark, this is who you are, this is what you are, and he's seeing it for himself, like, oh, like, there's literally been no one else he's ever come across that has those powers, so he's like, it's gotta be one of my people. I was sent here to be this world's conqueror on some, Goku stuff, I mean, Goku was sent here was sent to Earth to take over it, but because he bumped his head and lost his memories, he ended up becoming the world's greatest hero. So it's the same thing in the Superman case of like, yeah, he ended up, his parents sent him here to survive, not to take over. I mean, obviously we know there are Kryptonians who do take over, which now begs the question, what is the Zod situation like? Because I doubt that's a Zod. I mean, it could be, but that felt like oh, I'm here on Earth and I know I have powers, like, type of situation. So that felt like like I've already gotten access to my powers, so I've already kind of been around the yellow sun. So it felt like that's, especially because they already set up the multiverse stuff, that it's like, that's got to be an invading Superman from another universe. So, not unless it ends up being a Zod from it, not unless that's how they tie it in, like, instead of Zod being from this universe, maybe Zod's from another universe, because they made a point not to cover the person's face. Like, if it was actual Clark, I mean, I guess that, because the general would be like, yeah, but he looks too young. He wouldn't, that would have been a dead giveaway, but once again, it was like done through a mask, and Clark's the only one who's ever, in all these years, displayed the powers. He has the cape and everything. Yeah, he doesn't have the armor, but it's like, oh, I know what you're doing. You're like trying to, like, you're all these years later, you're revealing yourself to the world as a hero, but I see you for what you are. You're a monster. You're a weapon. And for Clark, who already kind of has like such a low opinion of himself right now, thinking like, man, I want to do good, but maybe this is what I was really sent here for. Maybe I am a monster. Maybe I am a weapon. Like, why else would I have these powers? No one else can shoot fire out of their eyes, and I can literally rip steel in half with my bare hands. Like, why else would I have these powers other than be a weapon, And for him, it's like, I've been deluding myself and, thinking I'm good, but that's because I didn't know the truth of who I am and what I am, and he's letting the general define him, because because he's at a point where it's just like, why are you coming after me? Like, wait, you have all this reason. Like, you wouldn't fake this. You're showing me these, like, these recording of what happened today. It might be a situation of, like, it's not like an actual real recording. It might be a recording of his memories. Like, they probably, like, digitized and kind of made a AR kind of VR thing of, like, his memories. So, but the general kind of starts having his doubts about this. But Waller being Waller, it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to eliminate him. We have him after all these years. But are you like, now that you have the opportunity, are you really about to back down? And the general's like, I want answers about what's coming. And it's like, maybe we got this wrong. Maybe we were so blinded by our sadness and our anger that we aren't seeing this for what it really is. And it's like, and I thought it was interesting because it's like, when you see him, he reminds you of her. Now, I thought that was in reference to Lois, but it might be his wife. Because maybe that was like a thing about Lois's mom. Maybe she was very adamant about, like, right, she always wanted to do the right thing. And maybe that kind of came in conflict with Sam being the military man that he is, and maybe that's why it's like, oh, you're a little too soft when it comes to this. I mean, it could just be like, hey, like, you could be thinking of Lois because Lois is very idealistic like that, and or maybe it is a combination of two. Maybe it's like Lois's idealism is something she got from her mom. Maybe that's kind of the direction they're leaning in, but it feels like that could potentially go either way on what Waller meant in that capacity. But doing what she does, because what did she do? She let Livewire out, who let everyone else out, including Ivo, who went crazy and started absorbing it. I'm like, that's so, and she ends up throwing it on the general. It's like, oh, they said like you're not doing what you're supposed to. You're not eliminating Superman like you're supposed to. And this whole disaster happened. It's like, no, he can't prove it, but this was all her fault. Like, she's the one that did this, because for her, it's like, it's a calculated move of, well, if they're able to kill Superman, oh well, and then we'll track them down and put them down like the rabid animals that they are, because they're a means to an end. They always were. They should have never gone this far. Even the general should have never gone this far. Yes, it was Waller who had them off their leash, but once again, she even said like they were always meant to be a means to an end of like, yeah, Ivo's kind of going a little crazy, but maybe he can serve his purpose one more time and help us before we kind of have to remove him from the equation, before helping us kill Superman, because they were able to kind of lock him down because of Ivo. So, but yeah, he went full kaiju in this episode. I wasn't expecting that. Which is interesting, because like even like the version of the character in Supergirl, I don't know if he typically ends up going full monsterish as he does, but like in Supergirl, he's very like kaiju monster-esque. It doesn't get to. I feel like he might have got. I know he got massive at one point in time, but I don't think to the point that he got massive like in this. It felt like some Power Rangers level of like how massive he was. Like I said, like a more like Godzilla kaiju situation, which is interesting because like isn't there like a comic coming up about the Monsters universe blending with the DC universe, like the monster universe that Godzilla's from blending with the DC universe? I think so, if I remember correctly. So I do think it's so interesting too, like at the same time, like it isn't just Jimmy and Lois that are looking for Clark. Like they even got, Flip and the news kids to kind of help. And it's like, right, Superman saved my life, and regardless of what people say about him, he's a hero, and so I want to help him. Like after he's helped me, I want to help him too. I don't know why anyone wants to hurt Superman, but he's a hero. And it's like, if this is an opportunity for me to, do some good, like be able to, in some small part, help. And I think that in itself is the beautiful representation. Even the ending of the episode is a beautiful representation of what Superman's supposed to be. Superman is that symbol, a symbol of hope that everyone can, like, it's like, right, you being the hero you are makes me think that I can be a hero too, that I can help out in my own small way. So I think that's a really beautiful theme to kind of, have as a thread throughout this episode in that regard. I mean, when it's all said and done, like the rest of the squad, like Banshee and them, as well as Heatwave and Livewire, all ended up getting away. I also think it's interesting that Livewire's the reason why Slade has the eye patch now. Like she shocked his eye and burned it. So I was like, interesting. Because like before now, because we didn't know for sure whether or not, because he had that cool anime thing of like his hair covering up his eyes, so we don't know if he was missing an eye. And it's like, no, now we know because they make a point to show like the eye patch. So I think it's interesting too, because I think it almost plays into it. They don't really lean into him being, it's just as an aesthetic choice, but part of me almost wondered if they made him the pretty boy that he is because of like maybe he's vain, and now it's like, oh, like Livewire like took his eye and made him kind of ugly. Like, what if that's some element of it, like, oh yeah, like that's why he was specifically designed to be a pretty boy. Once again, it could just be like, no, it's just an aesthetic choice of he looks the way he does in this because that's just the aesthetic they're going for. So it might not be like a deeper reason like that. And the sad thing is, like, because Clark is missing and Lois is like, I said those things to him. I told him just to kind of be normal. Like, I doubted him when he needed me to like trust in him. And it's like, but Jimmy's reassuring him, it's like, it's going to be okay. Like, we're going to find him, right? And it's like, yeah, we are. So luckily they found him, but he was so down on himself after like he managed to escape from Task Force X. And it's like, I'm a weapon, but it's like, this world would be better off without me. But for Lois, it's like, no, it wouldn't, It's It's like this world, even that line, it's so beautiful. This world is better with you in it. My life, my world is better with you in it. And Clark, despite like what people think of him, it doesn't matter, because in this moment it's like, Ivo is going to hurt people. I'm the only one that can stop him. It's like, it's my responsibility. This technology is here in the first place because of me and my people. So I've got, and I think this will drive Clark. He's going to push for answers more so than he's ever, like the little he got before, it was like, well, that's enough, He hasn't really gone back to check things out and kind of get any more information. But I think for him, it's like, this will push him to like, I need to know, I need to understand. And I think Jimmy in the end will be the one to kind of piece things together. We'll get to that in a little bit. But him going up against Ivan, once again, who's just feeding off of every bit of energy in the city, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Clark can't quite stack up to him. It's just like, right, take out all you want against me. Like, don't blame the city. I love that even Clark's like, no, it's like, Ivo's like, because his whole point was like, oh, you cheated last time. That's the only reason why you beat me. And it's like, once again, like, why is Clark, once again, the bad guy in this situation, when in actuality, it's like, you're the one that put people's lives in danger. You wanted to prove yourself. I'm like, no. The board of my company wanted to try and boot me. It's like, no, this is all your fault. You turned me into this. It's like, you're all responsible for your own circumstances, especially like Livewire's case and stuff like that. It's like, well, you being the bad guy, you are led to your circumstances. Same thing for Ivo. But it's like, once again, it's like your mind is being eaten away. It's not like you're thinking rationally. You are already losing your mind. So you're grasping at any reason, it's like, you're the reason why I'm the way I am. Like, I won't, it's not even about all that. It's mainly about like, nah, I'm going to win. I need to win. And I love Jimmy using his newfound audience to reach out to everyone in the city. It's like, we need to turn off the power. That's the only way we're going to be able to stop Parasite. It's like, I'm Jimmy. I'm like Superman's like best friend. And Lois is like, I'm Superman. I'm Lois from the Daily Planet. But it's like, right, we've all kind of looked at Superman a certain way. Hey, here's someone who can do the things he can do, and it's scary. But at the end of the day, all he's ever done is try to help this city. Like, he saved the city more times than we can count. I know it's scary and easy to doubt him, but he's proven himself. Trust in him to help us. Like, he's helping fight for us right now. So, let's at least try and like give back and help too. Do our own parts, to mitigate Parasite's powers. And Clark can hear everyone whispering, like, I'm scared. Like, people saying, I'm scared. Like, Superman, please, like, you can do this. And he stands up to Ivo, and it's just, I love that just Superman moment of, he's like, well, what, you're not even human. What would an alien monster like you know about this? And he's like, haven't you read the news? And then like pierce through the exoskeleton that is the Parasite suit and removed Ivo from its core. And it's like, haven't you read? It's like, who are you? And it's like, haven't you read? I'm Superman. I was like, I love that. I thought that was dope. Because it's like, right, your choices that you've made, as well as the ones you continue to make, are what made you who you are. Don't put that on me. You are a product of your own choices. And Clark made his in that moment to step up and be the hero despite everything. Because he wanted to do what was right. He wanted to help people. Always has, And just that moment, like, I just like Jimmy being like, Clark! He's like, hey, Jim, I'm okay, Jim. He's like, yeah, that's why I'm never going to let you go. And then he kind of backs away when Lois he's like, oh, let me give you some time. And for that beautiful, like, Clark and Lois moment of just like kind of like kissing her and just kind of flying into the air. I'm like, that's super adorable. That's beautiful. But then tying into what I was kind of bringing up before, where Jimmy ends up finding the spear that Lois had, and I'm curious if that's going to be, it's like, okay, so for one, you found this and you hadn't told Clark or me about it, so you should have been upfront about it. But now that might also make Jimmy go like, this might be the answers we're looking for about what Clark saw, what Task Force X saw. It's like, it's not about Clark, it's about invaders. Yes, Kryptonians, but invaders from a different dimension in its entirely, And also, let's not forget the kryptonite's there too. So, we'll see. Like, yes, Lois believes in him, but like, I'm curious to see what the reaction is going to be like from Jimmy, like when he confronts her about it, and it's like, right, you need to tell Clark about this, So So I'm curious to see. I mean, maybe it's all going to be copacetic and Clark's going to be okay with it. He's like, right, now I understand why Task Force X was worried about me. But it's like, no, this isn't you. This is another dimension. But then like that might be what pieces it together. Like Clark's like, maybe those weren't my people, because once again, as we know, all of his people were wiped out. So it has to be a Clark from a different universe, or it could just be Kryptonians from another universe. Like I said, it could be like a Zod or something. We just don't know who's behind the mask. You assume it's got to be Clark, but we don't know for sure. Well, I was about to say, like, because my thing is, this is a point I brought up earlier. I meant to kind of circle back to, so I might as well do it now. Is Clark's interaction with the technology, he's had visions of that day. So it's not, so it might be that the technology is coded in his DNA. And so it's like, it has like their stuff coded into those because it's connected to his DNA. So the moment he touches the technology, it gave him visions. It's because another version of him, his DNA is tied to these or some shape or form. So, because I was also just thinking like, well, I brought it up before of like, oh yeah, there's the whole, I was like, I initially thought like, oh, with the technology and everything, I was like, could this have something to do with Darkseid? It's like, not less that Superman, if it's Clark from a different universe, not less he serves Darkseid in that universe. And he's like going around conquering other worlds, not just for his own sake, but Darkseid too. I mean, maybe this is like a multiversal thing of like, maybe this isn't just about one evil Clark. Maybe this is about gathering up all these different evil Clarks to try and take over the multiverse. I don't know. That's kind of like a really, I'm just kind of throwing that, see if it sticks to the wall type of thought. But yeah, now that Waller's gotten complete control of Task Force X, and she's like, yeah, I was given this authority by Checkmate. So I was like, oh, because I interpreted, I was like, wait, I thought I had brought this up earlier in the season. I was like, is Checkmate and Task Force X the same thing? But then it seems like, I guess, like Task Force X is like Checkmate's the larger, I guess, secret government organization, and then there's subgroups amongst them, and I guess that's what Task Force X is. Or, maybe Checkmate's one particular person who oversees everything, who's kind of like, because they do have, because she said like Checkmate and the U.S. government gave me the authorization to take control from you. And also, here's the last weapon from Ivo. It's going to be the weapon you're going to use to kill Superman. So I think it's going to all come to a head next episode with Lois probably being there to stop her dad from killing Superman. So that's going to be interesting, the confrontation on that part, because we know that Lois has been avoiding her dad. I think it's interesting too, because in the past he was supposed to be on like, oh, like we're supposed to be focusing on our duties, but he was too busy trying to call his daughter at the time. I don't know if like maybe that was, I mean, that might have been Lois, or maybe it might have been his wife that he was calling, because like after she died, I think he just dedicated, I think a combination of probably that day had such an impact on him that he probably changed a lot. And then you probably put that in conjunction with Lois's mom dying, like that probably made him turn inwards even more. And that just made him and Lois's relationship get strained that much more. But either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens. The next episode is the season finale, so I'm really excited to ultimately see how this all plays out and how this season ultimately wraps up. Because there's not going to be a clean ending to this, because there's still so many pieces at play. I highly doubt everything's going to get resolved, so it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening and what setup for the future we'll get. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.